Thank you, Miles. Calling to order the Needham Select Board meeting of January 24th. The first item on our agenda is public comment. My understanding is Ms. Andrea Dannenberg from 131 Locust Lane is here. If you would please come up. Public comment is something where we typically have 3 minutes, and generally there's not discussion, but by all means, come on up.
My name is Andrea.
No, please come up to the table and use a microphone for the tremendous viewing audience. You know how that is.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Dannenberg. I'm a resident of Needham Precinct C, a homeowner and a taxpayer. I'm here to comment on the proposed Castle Farm development presented in both the October special town meeting and at the neighborhood meeting last week. At both meetings, the select board chair expressed that the town is seeking this unique land in order to preserve it. And that's an objective I enthusiastically support. However, as I've learned more about the project, I'm increasingly concerned about how that land may be obtained and the conditions the town is accepting in order to do so. My understanding is that the town is working with Northland Residential on a Chapter 40B local initiative program request. Under this request, Northland Residential would build a 70-unit neighborhood on a portion of the property. Northland will not use Needham's existing planning board and zoning processes to allow for the high density development. Instead, the Chapter 40B comprehensive permit process will override Needham zoning. Chapter 40B is the state's affordable housing program. Materials on the state website indicate a goal of 20 to 25% affordable housing under this program. The housing plan under review in tonight's meeting calls for townwide inclusionary zoning of 12.5% affordable units in developments of 6 or more units. Yet Northland is proposing just 5% of their development would be affordable housing. The select board chair stated at the neighborhood meeting that this is not an affordable housing program, but an effort to preserve the land. While that is admirable, this local initiative project would set a concerning precedent. This would undermine future efforts to truly build affordable housing. Developers could point to the 5% affordable housing threshold the town approved for Northland, seeking to reduce or avoid affordable housing commitments. Is conservational land here the difference? My property is adjacent to the Guernsey Sanctuary. Could I get town support for a friendly 40B if I turned a portion of my land over to the sanctuary, remove my single family home and replace it with condos, as long as a small percentage of those condos are classified as affordable housing? What guidelines will the town follow for future Chapter 40B local initiative projects in cases where conservation is involved? And that's not clear to me as a resident. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anybody else here who wishes to make a public comment? If not, then we will.
Sam, do you want to make a...
No, I checked and was told no. That's what I had asked. Okay. Hello, Mr. Nelson. Before we go to the rest of our agenda, I do want to make one comment. I know there is great community interest in the resolution of the case involving Mr. Henry. The select board is currently not at liberty to discuss any settlement until counsel for both sides have finalized the resolution agreement. We hope to have a further update soon and will provide the information then that we are legally able to provide. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda is in fact a public hearing, which has been continued for the alteration of premises for Needham Food and Beverage LLC, doing business as The Heights. Hello there. So I think we have Mr. Hartley, no, Ms. Hartley
Yes.
and Mr. Hughes, right?
Yes.
Yes,
And
Madam
if
Chair.
you could both be sure that you have a microphone to speak into, that would be great. Okay, this one's been deferred, I think, a couple of times,
Yeah,
right?
it's just been
Well, we were
vacation
trying to
schedule
get
in
through
December,
everything
and frankly, I
else.
had the flu 2 weeks ago.
Terrific. We're glad you recovered. Excellent. All right, if you want to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the rest of the board. Needham Food and Beverage is the license holder for The Heights, which is the bar that is inside the Homewood Suites on 200 First Ave. The bar has been operating for several years, and they're hoping to expand their license in order to be able to sell beer and wine singles, essentially, out of the
Sweet shop.
yeah, I call it the sweet shop. It's barely even a shop that's located adjacent to the bar and in the reception area. The idea is that when the bar's closed, which unfortunately due to staffing and other reasons has been relatively frequently, that the guests can buy a beer or a bottle of wine and have a glass, in the lounge area or up in their rooms. It's not intended to be any type of room service. There'll be no consumption in the hallways or in any other areas that are not their guest rooms or their lounge area, which is already serving. There's no request to change the hours, no request to change anything other than they can sell a little bit of beer and wine out of their little shop right there. All people handling the alcohol will be tip certified if approved. There's also going to be installed a identification scanner, which is also used at the bar, but they're going to buy another one for the shop. And as an extra safeguard against abuse, the hotel is going to make sure that anyone who seeks to purchase registers their room. So they know exactly who's buying what and where it's going to. And with this, it's just the average guest of this hotel is a business traveler or who may even have many colleagues with them at any particular time. And they don't always want to go out to a restaurant to get a bite to eat and a drink after work, after the meetings. But if the bar is closed, that amenity is no longer available at the hotel. So we're just looking to supplement for when the bar is closed, to have this little shop that allows them to purchase beer and wine.
Okay, great. Is everything in order? I am aware, so we take the licensing of alcohol quite seriously in town.
Very
I know that there was an incident in the past at Homewood Suites, and I know that you put in some improved procedures then. I'm glad to hear you're also putting in a scanner now. We haven't had any incidents since that time, so I appreciate the efforts that you made. Do any of my colleagues have any questions?
Madam Chair. Thank you, and I know, I'm not going to go over what was just stated, and it sounds like you have the safeguards, but just for people watching and myself, can you paint a picture of what this is going to look like? Is it you said a small area, and I have it here in the buffet, but how extensive is it going to be? You walk in and...
So when
Just
you're
the-
at the front desk,
Yes.
there's just like a little side area to the front desk where we sell candy and ice cream and things like that. So in many hotels, we're part of Hilton, there'll be on the top shelf a space for beer and wine.
Okay.
In this case, though, in Needham, I'm not comfortable. I'm the holder of the liquor license. I'm not comfortable having that there because we can't lock that door. So what I'm proposing is we would still keep the beer and wine under lock and key at the bar. And that's
Okay.
why anyone who's at the front desk on a night when we would offer this, which again would only be when the bar is closed because we don't want to cut into our bartenders' sales, they would go and retrieve it from the locked
From the
case
lock
that's
here,
behind the bar.
That would be behind the
Yeah.
bar anyway. Okay, great. Thank you.
And having stayed at the Homewood Suites when we were redoing floors, my recollection is it's maybe 6 feet wide.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
very small
Yeah.
area.
That's very small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you. That was actually, that brought up my question was, what's the difference between the sweet shop and the bar if you're having them
Right,
do
yeah.
the same thing, but they are staying at the bar.
Right.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the board vote to approve the amendment for alteration of premises received from Needham Food and Beverage LLC, doing business as The Heights. If approved, vote to forward the approved alcohol license application to the ABCC for its review and final approval.
Was there a second?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you all.
I think what was relayed was a request for me to announce that Castle Farm is off the agenda in case people were unaware, I think people who are in the room are aware that there was a change and that we will not be discussing that particular agenda item tonight. All right. The next item is a public hearing on the removal of 3 public shade trees at St. Sebastian's. So if we could have Mr. Olson join us, and I understand we have some reps from St. Sebastian's here this evening. I'm not sure who exactly is joining you, but hi there.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And if perhaps both of you might introduce yourselves, that would be appreciated.
My name is David Rydell. I'm the Director of Finance at St.
Hi, Dave.
Sebastian's.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
My name is Joseph Ficacciolo. I'm a landscape architect at Halverson Time Bond, and we are consultants to St. Sebastian School.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the board. I'm Edward Olson, Superintendent of Parks and Forestry and the Town Tree Warden. I'm here tonight, as was mentioned, to present a public shade tree hearing. Before I present the facts, I just want to kind of set the stage for public shade tree hearings, talk about the rules. So public shade tree hearings are under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 87, Section 7. Anybody can request the removal of a public shade tree. The request comes through the tree warden. We will determine if that request is valid. And if we find that there is a public shade tree that is in good health, then it's our legal obligation to bring that before the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, I'm sorry, with an opinion. So believe it or not, with all the tree removal we've seen in town locally, we don't have any requests for public shade tree removals. Typically, on average, we receive about 1 a year. I believe the new board members saw the first one maybe last year at one of the first board meetings. It was for a tree on the Hoyden Street. So each public shade tree hearing is a difficult thing. We never want to remove trees. We always share and try to grow the value of trees in our community. So it's something we take very seriously and we weigh in accordingly. So tonight we're here with St. Sebastian's. St. Sebastian's has been to the board several times in past years with other requests, and some have gone favorably, some have not, but each one is looked at independently. This particular situation started many months ago, and I want to give credit where credit is due to the applicant. David, as well as his team of architects and designs and engineers, came to the town very early in the process. They had a vision. They came to engineering, they came to myself and got some feedback, and we kind of collaborated and worked together on this. As I mentioned, never removing a tree is an easy subject for us to take, but oftentimes we find that it's in the best interest of the town to support these requests. So this conversation started many months ago, and it started with the vision of improvements to the playing field at the lower football fields. And I'll set the stage for the environment. So, and forgive me, David, if I'm speaking wrong, but you come across Greendale Ave from the church over to the playing fields. And on the corner of Greendale and Great Plain Ave, there is a natural grass playing field, and that's a practice playing field. Besides that is the artificial turf football field. I don't have kids that go to private school, but I have friends that do, and I've watched football games there, and many of the board members have seen the games going on. The crowd gathers along the street there, and the crowd gathers pretty good numbers there. It's a great place to watch a field because of the natural topography of the area. One of the limitations of this area is the fact that it's not accessible. And I think the vision for this project stemmed from accessibility to allow all fans to have that access to this playing field surface and be able to share that view. So that's really how this vision started. And I don't want to speak for David or for Joe, but this is a stadium-style seating project that is basically going to put seating into the hillsides that mimicked upon a school in Brookline that I've seen that it is very successful and it looks great. So that was the basis of the project. So we got into the conversation, we talked about it, we looked at design plans, and we found that there are 3 public shade trees, and they don't really fit the same mold as most public shade trees. Most public shade trees are located in the grass berm along the street edge. These shade trees are basically shade trees by default through the property edge. There is no berm or natural alleyway there, so the property edge trees. And I say that because they're 99% St. Sebastian's trees. They only trigger the public shade tree process by a sliver of the lot line. So really, in fairness to our applicant, they came early and often just to keep us abreast of the developments. And as we looked at the plans, and I'm sure David or Joe could speak to that, we realized that through the excavation and the construction of this stadium-style seating, the trees are going to be impacted negatively. Oftentimes, people just see what's above ground, but these trees have root systems, and the root system would be excavated and removed for the most part on the side of the stadium seating. We could probably be able to do this project without taking these trees down. However, if we were, we might have those trees fail into the public way. And I think that's one thing as the tree warden that I have to look at carefully. It's tough pill to swallow to approve a removal, but sometimes it's necessary, because when I get that call in the middle of the night when I was sleeping and we have to respond at 2 in the morning when one of these trees falls into the public way, it's a scary situation. It's one that you get that call, you'll never forget it. And we try to avoid those calls where we can. So again, this conversation naturally led us to talking about potentially approving this under our terms, which would be 2-for-1, similarly to other boards and committees in town. When conservation approves a tree hearing, it's typically on a 2-for-1 replacement. And again, I give it back to the applicant's credit that they wanted to do the right thing for the town and for their community they serve. Furthermore, I'd just like to add that St. Sebastian's years ago came forward with another project along the property edge line as you go onto the on-ramp to 128. I'm not sure, Joe, if it was your firm at the time, but it might have been another firm. And they came to the town early and said, hey, we got this plan to plant a ton of trees to landscape our property edge. Would the town be opposed to this? And I said, of course not. We'd want to see this. And we talked about species diversity. I'm happy to say that those trees we planted back then are beautiful now, zelkovers and crab apples, diversity, beautiful tree species. So again, I think it goes to the fact that as tree wardens, we have to make independent decisions. But sometimes there's good faith, especially with applicants that we have a history with that have done the right thing, and they come in early and often. As I mentioned before, oftentimes we have others that might not come to the town and might do projects, and those failures, we try to learn and live from those examples. So again, as you'll see in your agenda packet tonight, I asked for favorable support and a vote to approve the recommendation to remove these 3 public shade trees. I did not set terms in there because we had already talked about terms, and St. Sebastian's was agreeable to our terms that we had set back in years past for 2-for-1 replacements, and have actually provided the town planting specs and planting plants if this is favorably approved tonight. With that said, I would answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is it, I wasn't clear after reading the package, but is it accurate to say that the trees that are removed will be replaced by some kind of tree still along the street edge?
That is correct.
That is correct. Okay. I wasn't certain with the 2-for-1 whether they were
Six
going
would be
somewhere else.
replaced.
Okay.
3 oak and 3 hackberry trees. So again, we had talked about diversity of species, trying to get some variety out there, and that's exactly what Ty and Bond and St. Sebastian is proposing.
Okay. I think there are a couple of questions, maybe.
Madam Chair? Thank you, and thank you for that presentation, Eddie. I know we've, besides the 2-to-1 planting schedule, we talk about a contribution to the tree fund. I see that in the description. Can you just, for my recollection, was that 300 a tree? I'm trying to think there was a number that we've used in the past.
I think we've gone back and forth, but I think the most recent example was $200 a tree. And that would be a voluntary gift to support our programs, and recognizing that trees have incredible value to our neighborhoods, our residents, as well as our applicants as well.
Okay, and that's been agreed to for that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to say I really love the design of the stadium seating. It's great to have it a little bit natural. In addition, you know, just instead of putting in some metal bleachers or whatever. So I really appreciate that. And just, I'm hoping that some of the replacement trees will be planted in the same place so that it will shade the folks who are sitting on the stadium seats.
It will, and that's a great point. I mean, when we collaborated back and forth, we recognize that these older shade trees have provided incredible value. So the species chosen were to do the exact same thing for the next generation. And again, sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow, but if we can get a 2-for-1 replacement and set this up for the next 100 years as a beautiful stadium and provide the shade, quality of habitat, that's what we want to do in the end.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, a few things. I mourn the passing that you would cut these down. I'm sometimes confused by the logic where you would need to destroy a tree with the construction, so you'll cut it down to kill it more permanently. I would kind of hope maybe you could save one of the trees by the crosswalk, or if you could modify, I can't ask you to modify the plan, I'm not asking you to, but it does, these trees are significant and they're pretty dramatic. And they are on the edge of basically a tundra of open fields. And it seems strange that the three trees that are the most spectacular are the ones you're cutting down. So I'm really uncomfortable with this. And it's a bitter pill, but I kind of think these trees have a value more than just 2 to 1. And not that I'm just happy to trade it, but just based on their age and their size, I think there's some value to it. And I'm upset that these are coming down. I was hoping maybe there'd be some option that some of them would stay. But that's your call.
Well, I think that is our call. And however, I would advocate in opposition of that. If you look at the plans, the critical root zone of those trees will be removed regardless if we save them or not. So they can be saved, but they will fail into the road. So again, as tree ward, it's my obligation, responsibility as a certified arborist to make sure that never happens. And that I can't promise that. So again, I sleep with a conscience at night, and I can't, we could deny this and certainly they can work around it. But as you can see, the critical root zone on one side will be removed, and that will let those trees lean towards the street and fail onto the public way. And that's something I don't think we can afford. And I totally recognize and sympathize the pain to lose any trees, because these are beautiful trees. They've lived a good life. But I think we look at the next generation to provide that same quality, and I think we double that with the planting plan that's presented tonight.
If I may, thank you. The school doesn't remove these trees lightly. We've been looking at this hillside to improve the accessibility, the safety, and the experience for the spectators for a long time, longer than I've been at the school. And unfortunately, it's a very limited space that we have between the street and the playing field to work with. And as we look to try and accomplish the accessibility and safety components of what we were trying to do, and to incorporate it into the hillside so that it's more aesthetically pleasing than simply bleachers, the design we came up with was this. And the professionals that we talked to just feel like the root system of the trees is going to be impacted to the point where we felt it was best to take them out and remove them with sizable but new fresh trees, a quantity of 6 along that similar area. The grade of this location where people watch the games is quite steep in some places. Yeah. And we have grandparents that come to watch these games, and inevitably we have someone slip and fall every year. So by trying to improve the safety and the accessibility of the area for those who require it, we feel like it's a step in the right direction, and we don't take this removal of these trees lightly. I can assure you.
If I could say something else, Madam Chair, and I don't want to wing it, but I would offer my staff services for an Arbor Day celebration with the school to talk about the value of trees and plant some trees in addition to the ones we're proposing, because I don't very often get to private schools, but I would love to offer my services.
We would love to do that.
And maybe this spring we can do that.
Yeah.
That'd be great. There was one other question, and I'm sorry, I did not get to go drive the site, which had been my hope. There's not been enough daylight hours lately. So just where does this site align with the driveway to the church? Is there any safety issue at all with the idea that this slope might be used more frequently? Looks like you're looking to use it as an outdoor classroom and for other purposes, which would be wonderful. But that somebody might drive out of the church across the street for some reason, something happens and they go over the hill. I'm just curious about safety precautions in such a scenario.
So there's 3 entrances and exits to the church parking lot on the east side of Greendale Avenue. The one to the farthest south is closest to the existing crosswalk and not really directed towards the area of the construction that we're talking about. The one to the north
is to the north of the area and sort of faces the existing grass practice field. So the construction zone that we're talking about is largely between those two entrances and exits.
Great, thank you.
This, as just to comment, as part of the project as well, the school has proposed to put an additional crosswalk in to help improve the safety of those spectators coming from the church parking lot across Greendale Avenue to the location as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I would welcome a
public hearing.
motion. Oh, it is a public hearing. Good point. If there are members of the public who would like to comment on the shade trees. Molly. Molly, come on up to the, come on up to the microphone.
Nice to meet you. I'm glad that Mr. Keene mentioned the loss. I think it's really serious. It sounds like if they have the diameter that was mentioned in the paper, that they have to be pretty old. I just can't let it go by without saying I think it's a really serious loss, even to your campus. I know you have a beautiful campus, and I just feel like taking down old trees like that, you diminish the campus, and it's sad for Needham. So many trees have come down in the years we've lived here with all the commercial development and condo building. So that's why I'm here tonight, and I hope that you are really going to follow through with planting the 2-for-1 if you go through with it. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Any other comments? I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the board vote to approve and sign the public shade tree hearing form for the removal of 3 red oak trees in the front berm of 1191 Greendale Avenue.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
4-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the care and the thought that you've put into this. We are sad that big, beautiful trees are going. We understand that 20 years from now, there will be 6 big, beautiful trees there. The best thing you can do if a tree's going today is plant another one, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move the appointments and consent.
Is there a second? Any further discussion, questions? Yes.
I just want to say, I've been here now for 10 months or so, and we go through the consent agenda really quickly, but I just want to point out that every time we find in the consent agenda all these fabulous donations that Needham residents are making to various Needham charitable organizations, town organizations, and I just, I look at them every time, and I just wanted to say that they're there and we appreciate it, even though we pass them quickly in the agenda. I just want to make a note that I really appreciate people's generosity, and it's nice to see that that's happening. That's
Well
all.
said, absolutely.
Absolutely. Any more comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is passed 5-0. And in this, we've appointed our 2 user reps for the DPW feasibility study, which is the next one the town will undertake. All right, the next item on our agenda, which I'm not looking at, but I believe it's a public hearing, the ABCC amendment for a change of officers for Gordon's Fine Wines. Hi there, David. How are you? Good to see you. I was thinking the form doesn't easily say who were the last officers. My recollection is your dad.
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, great, gentlemen.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members. My name is Tom Miller from McDermott, Quilty and Miller in Boston. I'm here on behalf of the licensee, Gordon's Fine Wines. As you can see, I'm joined by David, who is the manager of record and the proposed president of the corporation. This application is simply the simplest way to put it is it's an estate planning mechanism for Richard to pass the company to his sons, Kenneth and David. He's doing that through 2 trusts. The interest in this license specifically is being divided between the 2 trusts, and the officers and directors are being amended to reflect that David and Kenneth are the proposed new officers and directors. Both David and Kenneth have been operating with their father for many years. They understand this business. They understand how to run this type of business. The town will see no change in the way this business, which will be open soon, will operate. But in all effects, and there won't be any noticeable change. It's simply an estate planning mechanism. So we're happy to answer any questions you and the board have on this, but that's essentially what it is.
Great. David, do you want to make any comments about the business or update us with where you're going? And I know
Construction started, we got our building permit, I think, 3 weeks ago. So construction is, and demolition's underway. And I think, 60 days-ish, we'll be up and running. So, yeah, knocking wood.
Right,
It's
always.
not easy these days, but we're getting there.
All right, great, thanks. Any questions?
Anyone? Where's Kenneth?
My brother
Yeah.
is home down the street with his fiance.
All right. Is he going to be in this 50/50?
I am,
Is it
so
split?
the way I'm the president of, we have 5 locations. I'm the president of all 5 locations. I'm the manager of record for this location.
Okay.
He is the manager of record for the other locations. No problem.
I was going to say, and you have had that division of labor for a while, as I
Long time,
recall,
yes,
so,
yes. This is
yeah.
nothing new.
no, not. And David is a Needham resident too. in
Right,
case-
correct.
Yes.
just so people know. If there are no further questions, you already heard our alcohol speech, and I know you've heard it before.
Many times.
It is important to us, so I will just reiterate its importance. I'm glad you've heard it before.
Important to me as well.
Don't let it go in one ear and out the other,
Definitely
so,
not.
excellent.
Madam Chair, this is a public hearing.
It is a public hearing, thank you. Is there anyone from the public, I'm having a night, right? Is there anyone from the public who would like to come comment? I see no one here, so I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Select Board as Liquor Licensing Authority approve and sign an application for a change of officers and change in stock interest for Gordon's Fine Wines of Needham, Inc., doing business as Gordon's Fine Wines, 150 Gould Street, and to forward this application to the ABCC for approval.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Best of
Appreciate it.
luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. The Human Rights Committee, discrimination complaint process. See, Tina and Marilyn are here. I saw some other Jen's here. and- No, you're just here for you're all welcome. You're all welcome.
We asked him to come for support.
I'm glad you're being supported. So this has been a long time in the making. Years. That's a good way to put it. I think it may have started the last time I was chair or vice chair, so 5 or 6 years. It goes back a very long time, I think. And I know you've been working to develop a process that was workable, that our town council could agree would be workable. And we're, as a community, trying to find a way and a place that can be not directly with town hall government, right? But can hopefully be a comfortable place that somebody has a concern about the community at large, that they would be able to take it. So let me turn it over to you to talk with the board about that.
So just an overview of the process that we've been working on, the way that we're envisioning it, and there's if you
And maybe
got
if
a
you two want to
chance.
introduce yourselves, because I'm not sure everybody knows you.
I'm Tina Burgos. I'm the chair of the Human Rights Committee. I live in Needham.
And I'm Marlene Schultz, and I'm a committee member.
So
Many years.
we've been working on this for quite some time. Overall, someone would come to us with a complaint. We would determine whether or not it falls within the purview of human rights. And if the complainant wanted to move forward with pursuing some sort of remedy, that process would kind of go through our committee. The things to really keep in mind are this is a very unbiased process. So I think there's been a lot of concern that automatically we would take the side of the complainant. That is not at all what this is. It is a very fair-minded process, and that is something that we've been talking about all along. The other thing to keep in mind that is going to be challenging because we are an arm of the town government is maintaining open meeting law requirements. And so we need to be very upfront with whoever comes to us with those policies, those procedures, making sure that they understand that we cannot completely ensure confidentiality. Once documentation begins, then it becomes a matter of public record. Again, this is something that we've been talking about for the past couple of years, and it's going to be important that we set expectations at the beginning and continue to remind people of what those expectations are as we go through the process.
I think it's important to say that we want to make sure that we have a place for anybody who lives, works, or travels through town. If they feel that they have been discriminated against in any way, that there's a place in town that we want to hear what their complaint is. Not that we're going to agree with them, but that we want them to feel this is a town that cares about that. And so that's really why we went forward. And many, many towns in the Commonwealth have discrimination complaint processes for residents and those who work and travel through. And I think that even just having it is a positive for the town. I think it's really says something about who we are in Needham. So we have put together for you sort of a flow chart. So you can see the process if someone comes with a complaint. And we also listed on the first page all the protected classes. So what a discrimination complaint might be in the areas of race, color, religious views, national origin, sex, gender identity and expression, citizenship, age, ancestry, family marital status, sexual orientation, disability, source of income, and military status. So those are all the covered protected classes. So you want to go?
As Marlene was mentioning, that I did also want to say that she mentioned that there are a lot of other towns and cities that have this process put into place. We pulled best practices from several towns, so we're not reinventing the wheel here. There are, other towns are doing this and also have open meeting law considerations to contend with. So there was a lot of thought into, you, Marcus, was a part of this as well in the beginning. So,
and Marianne, you heard the presentation from Arlington when they came to our meeting, so.
Correct. So just go through the flow chart. A complaint would come in. Now we could either do this via phone call, and a phone call would help eliminate any sort of confidentiality challenges with that, because at that point, we're not documenting anything. We're just sort of introducing the process and who we are. If, however, the complainant would like to fill out the intake form, and this is a draft of something that we've been working on. And again, it's listed here in a couple of different places. It's a matter of public record. Once this form is completed and submitted, then we would take the complaint, we would present the complaint to the Human Rights Committee. The entire committee would then decide whether or not it falls within the purview of our committee to move forward with the process. If we determine yes, then one person is assigned to research this case. That does not necessarily mean that only one person is responsible. There are other resources within the town with whom we've actually communicated with and reached out to, so that there's a wide support group, whether that's Needham Police Department, the Needham Resilience Network, the Housing Authority. I had a meeting with Superintendent Gunkans this summer to talk about this. He's on board. So there are several organizations and committees in town that would help with the process if that was necessary. In a lot of cases, what people really just want is a shoulder or a listening ear. And those cases are resolved pretty quickly. So we go through the process of the research and the investigation, and then we try to figure out what ultimately do does the complainant want as far as resolution? And then we try to figure out, how do we facilitate that? In a lot of cases as well, we're triage. We're not necessarily figuring this all out between the HRC and the complainant. Again, there might be several pieces put into place. We want to be a resource. We want people to feel like they have a place to go. Ultimately, we may not resolve the case the way that the complainant would like, but at least an effort is made, and we're here to try to remedy this as best as we can.
I think it's important to say that we would, once we had decided in committee that it was a potential violation of human rights, that we would go to the respondent also. So we want to listen to both sides of the story. And then hopefully, when we hear what each side says, it's very likely that they might just come together with us there and they would resolve the issue, which is what has happened in other places that I've been and done this. So that's very possible. But, we are not going to, we list here the areas that we're not going to get involved in. We're not, if it's a criminal, that's not our purview. Something to do with personnel in the town, that's not our purview either. So it's, we just want to be clear about what we're looking for.
So all of this came into us today. So I don't know when members of the board saw it. If members in the public are trying to follow along, they are in the packet that was posted earlier today.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you for this. I guess I want to further clarify what kind of interactions we're talking about here. Are you talking about cases where an individual is bumping up against the town, or is this altercations between neighbors, between institutions in the town that are not of the town, say a school, like the private school, for example, who was just here about the trees? Anybody can come to you?
Yes, any and all.
Okay.
Would you like me to give you an example of something that we worked recently?
Yeah, sure. I guess, yeah. And then I just have another question.
Go ahead.
Well, I just, I mean, first of all, this sounds very stressful for you guys. It sounds like you're going to be working sort of as mediators, and I'm wondering what kind of experience and background the people who will be doing the mediation have. I mean, not to be rude, but like, what qualifies you guys to mediate these affairs?
We just had a training, actually.
Okay.
And only certain people who are comfortable doing it, or maybe have had experience doing it, have had a lot of experience doing this. So I can help people also. So not everybody will be working with the cases. So it may be a rotating basis. We haven't
sort of a self-selecting group.
Yeah, but there will be probably one person who will be the initial contact person. And the other thing I wanted to say that we've talked about all along is that we want to do this for a year and evaluate and see how we need to tweak the system, because we know it's not a perfect system.
I mean, it sounds really interesting.
Absolutely something that was discussed early on, that training would be required.
Yeah.
To embark in this.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
We had a very good training.
And then you said you had examples.
Well, I have just a kind of a simple, a person came, wrote a long letter, and felt that he was being discriminated against by Center at the Heights in a class where that he was taking. It was a writing class. And so I contacted the Center at the Heights and said that this came forward. And we didn't have a formal process, but we wanted to respond to this individual. And they told me that the person was inappropriate in the class, and they could no longer allow the person to be in the class. And because this person happened to have my home address and all this information, I got a little nervous. So I contacted the chief of police, who was also familiar with this individual and said that he was not dangerous, so I didn't have to worry. So what we did was then we followed up and told him that this was a policy of the courses, et cetera, at the Heights. He was not being discriminated against. He was not following the rules. And so that was the resolution.
Did he take ownership over that? Did he acknowledge he was?
No,
wrong,
he
or
had
kinda-
a lot of mental health issues, so he couldn't quite see it, but he didn't push it any further. When we said that was all, we couldn't do anything more for him. I don't know if that was helpful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I don't mean to be questioning. I know that this process has been going on for a long time, but since I'm new, I'm just catching up. But it sounds like you put a lot of thought into this.
So the way it works now is that, I mean, we're doing it, really. It's just there isn't a formalized process. A few months ago, we got an email to the human rights inbox. There had been an anti-Semitic sticker that had been posted on the back of a crosswalk sign. So that the person that saw that thought, well, this is the place, who am I going to go to about this? This is the place that, so I worked with Katie to sort of resolve that. I mean, it's a range of different things that people come to us about. And so to answer your question about what are the different things, we won't know until we really sort of, the frustrating thing is at this point, we've got actually one person that came to a meeting a few weeks ago, 2 months ago. We haven't been able to move forward because we don't have a process. And I think she's getting frustrated. It's frustrating for us. It's not a great look, right, for the town to not be able to help somebody that clearly feels like there was discrimination there. And we can't answer that. We don't know because we only heard one side of the story. We don't have the process to put in place. So right now, this is just on hold for her.
Okay. And your plan is also to sort of track, categorize. So at the end of the year, when you evaluate, we'll have some sense of what kinds of incidents, and it could be part of our reporting process to understand the climate.
It will definitely be part of the reporting process. So after every case, regardless of, if it's just a quick little email that, we get emails that come through, people report an incident, I get back to them immediately. Sometimes we never hear back. So something like that will get reported all the way to, we've gone through a process with somebody over 3 to 6 months, that will also get reported. So we're definitely going to keep track the data and sort of figure out where we are as a town with regards to incidents like these. And then, how do we move forward with that?
I don't see us being inundated. I would say that there will be a few a year, maybe. So.
But that's sort of what the average has been.
Yeah.
We get a handful at this point.
Madam Chair, thank you. And I've been working with you and getting updated, as you know, throughout the process. As you know from past conversations, I'm concerned with this process. I think the informal way I know might be frustrating right now, when we go into a formal process, and you talked about the confidentiality aspect of it, in the story, even in the senior center, if that were someone's business or, a neighbor, that is now part of the public record. And I think that's really hard to undo, even though after you go through the process, say, you know what, there was something wrong with this gentleman. Well, to me, the damage has already been done. So I'm very concerned about the confidentiality of it. I think that there are other avenues, and you would know more than I would, MCAD or the AG, where the Human Rights Committee could help someone contact someone that is in a position and say, okay, I'll conference you in on this call and we'll talk about this, and have that avenue work to facilitate things. And I know you've been working on them. I'm not trying to take the wind out of your sails on this. I'm just telling you that, when I made appointments to the Human Rights Committee, others have too, and kind of to Heidi's point, maybe a little different, is we appointed people for reasons, and this was not, to me, the reason to be an arbitrator. I know you can go through training, but there are other people that have immense training on these things. And I'm just concerned that, we pilot this out, but in the wake of that could be some people that get really damaged. And I think of neighbor disputes, I think of business disputes, And, to say that someone violated one of this, or even an accusation alone, I think the damage has been done. So that's where I am on this. I know the board members might feel differently, but it's not just a business. It could be a neighbor and, a misunderstanding. And to me, this escalates it too far, and now it's in the public realm, and what can happen with that. So I'd like to not vote on this, Madam Chair, tonight, just because I did get this today and have gone through and want to go through the flow charts, but I just want to put my comments on the record. But that, after that, I don't want to say, I do really mean thank you. I know there's no good answer in how to do this, but to me, the answer is kind of the old way, but I know that the committee and the board might want to move in a different direction. So thank you.
Marcus.
I just wanted to say thank you. And I know from being a part of this a little while ago and where you've come and how much work you put into this, you and the entire committee, it deserves that recognition and to be applauded for that. And where we're going for now is taking the first step in order to make a process that is going to work and something that we can get behind. And to Matt's point, I think acknowledging if something is to go to public record or things like that, that's something that is established from the get-go, so they know what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. And if they don't feel comfortable, then maybe they would try a different avenue, or you can help suggest a different avenue. But that wouldn't be something that would be new to them or a surprise to whoever makes these claims. That'd be something that was from the get-go. So I think with that in mind, I think it has a different feel from my point of view, knowing that you're going to be as transparent and objective to what's going on and listening to both sides. And it took a long time to get to this point. And like you said, this is a working document and a working plan that we're going to continue to vet and to make better. But if we don't start this, then I feel like we're continuing to put ourselves in a place where we can't help people when they need to be helped. So I appreciate you that, and I will be in favor for this.
Yes, if I may. Thanks so much for doing this. I think the town needs it, and you're right, it's a place for people, is an outlet. But it's a huge task to grapple with, so I wish you the best. I think you will probably have the town council on speed dial. But this is tough. This is a tough nut to crack. So thank you for doing it. And I think as we go forward, it'll be interesting to see how we protect with confidentiality, and because we're in this republic, so this is our tension. But thank you for tackling it. This is a tough one. Good luck to you.
So I also appreciate all the work, and as you know, I've participated with you at various stages as we were trying to figure out how to make all this work. I appreciate Matt's points, and I have not had the time today to go through all the flow charts, and I also look forward to doing that. But I can see built in here are the referrals to external agencies, which was something that we certainly discussed when you felt you had a case that merited and in fact, or required that level of work and jurisdiction that it properly belonged with MCAT or some other jurisdiction. So I am also grateful for all the work that you've done and glad that it finally came to the point where it was ready to come to us. I have been, and I do support going forward with this, and I look forward to seeing how it goes over the course of a year, and then doing an evaluation and having you back to talk about what you've learned over the course of a year. Nat has asked, and I do think it's appropriate, given, I'm sorry that all the materials got to us late, but so that everybody does have a chance to go through, review them, and then we'll bring it back for a vote at our next meeting. And I hate to have you come twice, but we may ask for somebody to come in case there's some other questions.
Of course. Yeah, that's a lot
Next
to
time
take
as
in.
well. So it's an important issue, and it's an important issue to get right. And I know you know that because you've been working on it for 5 years. So we are all well aware, and I know it's a delay, but I think we are just about there, and
We're gonna keep moving forward.
keep doing it.
Is what we're doing.
Awesome.
So we'll have more updates for you the next go around. But we had our training, our mediation training. We're putting together a training with Katie, with Chief Schlittler, Town Council. So we're going to have a lot of the legal groundwork covered, and we're just going to keep doing this until you guys tell us to stop. That's what's happening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Tina, I love your haircut.
Yes.
It's awesome. I was gonna say, I haven't seen you since the new
I'm
do.
going through a midlife crisis.
This is not a crisis. I feel like that's a
That's
win.
not a
Yeah,
crisis,
that is
definitely a
not.
win. I agree
You're
with
owning that.
Marcus. All right. The next item on our agenda was Castle Farm, which, as I said earlier, we are not having a discussion of tonight. The development agreement was not finalized, and we want to be able to present everything and have a discussion of all of it with pieces settled, at least to our satisfaction, before it comes forward. So with that, the next item is the town manager report.
Madam Chair, the first item is at the request of the Housing Plan Working Group that the Planning Board and the Select Board vote to approve the housing plan as presented to you, the final version, so that we can report to the Department of Housing and Community Development that the plan is in existence and has been approved. And it's my understanding that this is an important part of our application process towards the DHCD MBTA Communities Act. Also, that the plan includes a robust series of recommendations, but that by this action, the board isn't committing to any of the particular recommendations, that we would be then working through the recommendations and putting those into place through the normal board goal setting and town meeting zoning processes. So the Housing Plan Working Group asks for your support.
I think we'll see if there's any further comments. I definitely support the plan as it's been put together, but I note that it's not a housing production plan. It really is a plan that has gone through and examined possible strategies and approaches that the town can take to increasing our housing and affordable housing. And really the challenge, I think, for people everywhere that we should understand is that the hard work is yet to come, which is when you actually start discussing actual housing proposals in this town. They are always lengthy, labored, thorough discussions, and all that is still in our future with respect to any of these. So, other comments from the board?
Madam Chair, just briefly, I did hear from someone on the committee reflecting on our joint meeting with them and input, and some of that input was used to help with the housing plan. So they were thankful for the input. So just giving ourselves a pat on the back for that. But it was just nice to hear
Duly
that.
noted, Mr.
That
Barrett.
duly
Duly
noted that that they listened to people and that they took comments and incorporated them. So
I do think the working group did quite a job, actually, of listening numerous times to people and continuing to update the plan to reflect that input that they heard.
Absolutely.
Other comments? We can say thank you to Heidi and Marcus, who worked on that committee.
Well,
to
and
bring
if I
this
may,
plan
yeah,
forward.
I think though Heidi and Marcus, certainly were part of the team. There's considerable number of members on the Housing Plan Working Group who did a little bit more than we did, and I just want to say thank you. There's a bunch of them who really put their heart and soul into the research and the remedies, and I think that the housing plan has a lot of really great suggestions and things that we can work on and move forward. So I'm proud to have been a part of it and look forward to seeing where it goes.
And I couldn't agree more. And I will not give myself a pat on the back. I will give everybody else in that committee that worked tirelessly, to make sure and, dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and went back, reassessed, assessed, and the long meetings that it took and the long subcommittee and the whole process was something to really admire. And that is more so for the rest of the committee members that, did a lot of this.
Committee members and the staff.
Yeah, and the
Oh my
staff.
gosh,
Yes,
the staff.
absolutely. And the staff of the town did so much to kind of get us to this point. We're excited to be, but we know from here, the work that we have to do is tremendous. And I know that the town is up for the task, but like you said, it's going to take a lot of intentional conversations and mediation and all of those things. So just want to commend everyone involved for everything that they've done.
Want to say anything? No?
Of course.
Oh, Kevin, please.
this is remarkable. No, it's great. It's exhaustive. And I was kind of joke that there aren't enough charts in it, but there's so much data in this. It's amazing. I think I'm still stuck on appendix 7.4, but it's remarkable. So thank you to everyone who did it. So
Gets better, Kevin. 7.5 is the
as it goes. Don't spoil it.
I won't. Okay. Madam Chair, I move that the board vote to approve the Town of Needham Housing Plan dated December 2022.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Thank you. I'm sure Katie is pleased to have this, so she'll be submitting it as part of our submission that's required on time. And we'll be moving forward to other housing discussions that build on this work to figure out what it is truly going to mean for Needham. The next item on our agenda, back to the town manager.
Thank you.
Another report item.
Thank you. So as the board well knows, the town is contemplating acquiring property, which is the Castle Farm Foster property, as clearly outlined by its legal title here in the fact sheet. The state law allows that the town not enter into public procurement if the board determines that advertising doesn't benefit the town's interests because of the unique qualities of the parcel. So the town might enter into an advertisement for property if it was looking for any kind of property, but what we're trying to do here is buy property that is unique for a variety of reasons. And those reasons include, and when I would ask the board to vote, that the designation is on the basis that the property is large, undeveloped, and contiguous to both the town's existing Ridge Hill Reservation and the Charles River. The property contains existing walking trails that connect to the town's Ridge Hill Reservation trail network and will allow for increased public use and access of the scenic waterfront location. So this is an action, Madam Chair, that the town took, for instance, in every one of the parcels acquired around the fire and police station, which I believe number 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. And another example is Owens Poultry Farm and the 5 or 6 homes that we acquired. So the board made those designations because they were being acquired because of their location, not because of their size or shape. So that is the recommendation, that the board make this designation.
And I would just note, this is a regular ministerial duty that is part of acquisition of land that this board would typically do. Any questions for the town manager related to this particular? If not, then I would welcome a motion.
Can I suggest that Matt reads the motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the board vote to determine that in the case of the proposed acquisition of 0 Charles River Street, Assessors Parcel 199-304-4, containing approximately 3.25 acres, 0 Charles River Street, Assessors Parcel 199-304-5, containing approximately 3.05 acres, in a portion of the land known and numbered as 484 Charles River Street, Assessors Parcel 199-304-2, containing approximately 28 acres. Advertising will not benefit the town's interests because of the unique qualities and location of the property needed. This determination is made on the basis that the property is large, undeveloped, and contiguous to both the town's existing Ridge Hill Reservation and the Charles River. The property contains existing walking trails that connect to the town's Ridge Hill Reservation trail network and allow for increased public use and access of the scenic waterfront location.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Thank you. And now it's our favorite time of the year.
I thought the audit was your favorite time of the year.
Well, this is right up there. The budget presentation. This is actually way better than the audit, Dave.
Don't tell Scott.
I presume Mr. Davison is going to join us for the budget presentation?
Yeah. Dave, do you mind coming up for the hard questions?
He seemed like he was trying to hang back a little bit. I'm not sure what. I note that Mr. Levy had joined us. Josh, you want to show us the budget? We just left. This was current.
All right, all set?
We are.
So what we're here to do is to give you a brief overview of the budget recommendation. We did provide you with the town manager's budget summary and the very exhaustive revenue estimate summary that the Director of Finance has provided. And so we would sort of go at maybe 10,000 feet on this and then answer any questions that you might have. So I'm just going to keep turning, Miles, I guess. So basically, one of the things we talked about in the budget mess this year is how long it takes to do anything. So it feels like nothing's getting done, but then when you look back, it can be startling and remarkable how much has gotten done. And I think we need to do more patting on the back of and congratulating each other and the town about what has gotten accomplished. We hear a lot about how we can do everything we want. We can, if we just put our effort into it, we can do everything. And our budget message this year is we can do a few things, right? So we really don't have the bandwidth. You're all volunteers, you all work. There's lots of projects, there's a lot of competing interests. So when it comes to the really big thing, we can only do a few. So over the past decade, we have really been rebuilding the town, the infrastructure, horizontal, vertical, everywhere. I don't have to name them all.
2 decades.
2 decades. I only went one back for the pictures. But without question, and it's really remarkable, the number of buildings that that we have built from scratch or rebuilt, and we outline them all in the budget document. So we took some time to give you some pictures of sort of then, some are then and now, but mostly they're then, is a reminder of 10 years ago what it looked like. So as an example here, there's 2 bird's eye views of the town common, and we're going to have this beautiful sort of oval gathering space. And in the past, it was that sort of unusual 5-legged in a 4-cornered plot of land, which actually, frankly, nobody ever really understood. So that's to give you an example. Another overview here is that we're very mindful of that everything costs more, and that there's significant inflation, and that inflationary and also some supply chain pressures have really put pressure on a lot of the items that the town puts out. And we spend a lot of money on gasoline and diesel, spend a lot of money on asphalt and oil containing projects. And so we have been very careful as a department manager team and as a management team to be very judicious on what we're seeking to increase. That's not mandatory in FY24. So the other thing we're doing is we're really trying to position ourselves for FY25 when we know we have known needs, such as the positions that have become critical to us that are currently being funded by ARPA. We know we're going to need those in FY25, or at least we know we will be recommending those in FY25. So we're trying to set the budget up to be mindful of that. And we also know that there are initiatives that are not in the FY24 budget, and the one that we have been really trying to figure out how to fund is, for instance, a sustainability coordinator when the climate action plan is complete. So we have been very mindful about trying to have limited increases in FY24 with knowledge that there's some more things that we're looking to do in FY25. So real briefly on the budget priorities, they're in very small font, but luckily you know them. They're in both the capital plan and in the operating budget. The board's aligning with the board's priorities for buildings and infrastructure, economic opportunity, transportation systems, recreational and educational amenities. The next one, support for making sure the community is welcoming and inclusive. Oh, Miles, would you go back one, please? I wanted to point out how things change. If you can read the door panel, it says selectmen. Just want to be clear on that. I keep forgetting the pictures. Customer service, sustainability, climate, and efficiency. This picture here is for some of the board members actually probably never met. None? Matt, would you have ever met in that room?
No, I came to meetings in that room, but I never
was.
Wow, that did not dawn on me until this moment. Okay, that was how the board room was set up. In fact, the table was over there and not this way. So see how things change.
That's here before.
That's here over there. Yeah.
Before town hall was redone.
Three-person board?
Five
No.
person, it was a
No.
five-person board.
Kids on the side, I think.
On the
Yes.
side, yeah.
And in those days, the town manager sat at that little table off to the side. And the window you see was actually to the outside. So these are big changes. I was
yeah,
not
for
expecting to go down the photo lane. So there you go. Thank you for that. Wow. Okay. So the budget in brief, this is the most important table probably in the budget, which is the sources and uses. Just talk a little bit about some facts with respect to the revenue. The total increase in property tax is 2.7%. But I wanted to highlight, and we can talk a little bit more if you have more questions, is that the property tax within the levy is actually going up 4.7%. But the debt exclusion is going down enough to bring this number down to 2.7%. We actually have $3 million reduction between 23 and 24 in excluded debt. And that number will continue to decline until or unless the board and the community votes for additional debt service. So while it looks like the property tax is only up 2.7%, the within the levy portion is being offset by the debt exclusion going down. And the other piece to mention with respect to the property tax is the new growth category of property tax, which if you have specific questions about, I'm sure we can handle. But it's important to note that there's no estimate in this document for the potential for 557 Highland, the Innovation Center, or Children's Hospital Boston, or any other major development that might happen. And that will happen once these projects are more certain, although they're certainly closer to certain that they've been permitted, but they're not built yet. And we will be continuing our recommendation to you that some of those, or in fact, most of those, or all of those new growth revenues be dedicated to the infrastructure and build the capital facilities that we're looking at for the schools in particular. I think the estimate is for the Innovation Center could be between 3 and 5 million a year at full build out. And so that would have a significant impact on our ability to fund those projects. We continue to believe that the Debt Service Stabilization Fund might be an appropriate vehicle for putting those funds, but we're happy to discuss options with all the boards and committees. The state aid category is based on our historical review. In years past, we've had more cautious estimates of state aid, but looking back, we've had significant increases in state aid year over year, and 4% is the historical average. We're also assuming that with the new administration that we're not going to see a real reduction in our state aid. So that's a help, that will help bolster our budget for FY24. And finally, in the local receipts category, we target, or Dave targets, in the range of 80% of the prior year's actual. So we want to be conservative so that we don't end up with a revenue loss. And also because we build our free cash based on the availability of the receipts from the prior year. So those key categories in every year, but in particular in FY24, motor vehicle excise continues to be a significant source of our local receipts. Is it over 5 million this year, Dave? I think that might be the first year we were over 5 million. Residents continue to buy cars, and cars are getting more expensive.
We're hoping they'll buy more electric cars in the future.
Yes.
I'll just say.
Which are more expensive.
Yes.
Don't start.
All right.
Let's stay on topic.
I don't wanna
people,
get-
otherwise.
The current, that's right. We will be moving toward a much more reliable, less expensive electric vehicle for sure, once people buy more of them. Yes. All right, sorry. I won't go there.
Enough of that.
Other categories, the other excise is our hotel and restaurant food tax items. The food tax is back, but the hotel tax is revenue is significantly back. That's the hotel portion of that category is 3/4, and we're happy to see that the hotels are doing better and they're more populated. And the other two items that are reliable for local receipts include charges for services, which is our primarily our ambulance receipts, and license and permits, which is particularly building department. The general fund revenue source, you'll note the Friendlies, which is not, which was something else and is now something else, is historical there. I miss that fish-a-majig fries. The story here on the general fund revenue as a percent of total revenue is that the story stays the same, right? That property taxes remains the single highest category of receipts locally. Are we discussing Friendlies and where it is?
We know, we know.
Okay. Were some people not here for Friendlies?
Fribbles, is that what we're
Fribbles?
discussing here?
It was what, 7-Eleven, and then now
Yeah,
it's a bank.
Yeah.
Now it's a bank. Yep.
Another building.
So, in Needham, it's no surprise, hovering at 80%, the property tax makes of the general fund revenues. The local receipts and free cash can go back and forth depending on what kind of a year we have and how much of the free cash that we're actually using. The next slide is cherry sheet revenue estimate, and this is the significant portion of the state aid that receive is relating to Chapter 70. And one of the things that we know and why we're confident in the estimate that we have of revenue is that the state creates a calculated foundation budget, and their goal is that all communities state aid, their Chapter 70 makes up 17.5% of that foundation budget. And Needham isn't at that amount yet. So there has been a commitment in the past to get us there, and we're a couple of percent shy at this point. So we think that the cherry sheet revenue estimate for FY24 at 4% is a reasonable number. You'd see the historical, we don't expect the 9.5% we received last year, but we're hopeful on the 4%. We usually know something now because the governor usually makes an announcement at the Mass Municipal Association, but our new governor, Healy, has an additional 8 weeks in order to put her budget forward. I thought you would appreciate if you wouldn't mind, Miles, 1 second, is that how tight that truck really was in that station if you never were standing there next to it. It's just amazing. And the entrance at 99 School Street no longer exists. Now we can look at free cash. Those of you who were involved in government before the town hall was renovated, the state of the cupola was probably one of the #1 complaints that residents had. You may have had that same complaint. Just to show, I'm highlighting the free cash here because it is such an important category for us. Free cash, remember, is revenue in excess of estimates and spending less than appropriations. And so we have, the town has a policy of how much of free cash should be used for ongoing operations. And once that's satisfied, we are using it for one-time events, capital, financial warrant articles, or other investments in and funds. We have had some extraordinary, we used to say extraordinary free cash years, but now we are 2 years of 16. Dave's estimating a 15 million right now. It's not quite certified yet. And we've had more free cash not used in the last few years, which has increased the free cash in the next years. So that is something that's a little bit different. We've returned 4.5, 5.3, and then 2.3 in free cash. So onto the expenditure side of the budget. Typically, we look every year at these 3 budget drivers. This is something that we've been doing this since 2006 with the FY 2007 budget. We've been looking at pretty much the same drivers and the same charts, which has been really useful when you want to go back and look at historical trends. So employee benefits for many of the years has been a significant budget driver, some years outpacing our entire revenue for appropriation. We have been on a very solid plane for the employee benefits, and this is, even with medical costs increasing, this is something that has been very helpful because we have a lot of employees, and this item, when it goes up fast, can really put pressure on our budget. So the submitted budget for all of employee benefits was less than 1%. It's currently at 2% because there are recommendations for increases in headcount, and that for every one of those increases, Dave calculates fringe benefits for health insurance, workers' comp, and OPEB for those items. So one reason we did add qualified high deductible plan with a companion health savings account that has helped us keep our costs lower, and people migrating to those plans is can be a reduction, although that really pretty much has stabilized. I think the other thing that's helping us is that there's been unemployment is very low in the Commonwealth. We tend to be an employer of last resort. So in periods of recession, when spouses of our employees are laid off, either the spouse will come on our plan, or if the employees were on the spouse's plan, they all come on. So, you know, in the next couple of years, we may see increases based on that. School enrollment has, for the current year and the prior year, ticked up to a total of 0.8, and it was down 3.9 the year before that. I understand the demographer for the schools, McKibben, is predicting significant increase in the pre-K, for instance, and that the pre-K, K-5, and high school will be trending back towards pre-pandemic levels in the next few years. The middle school is lagging a little bit behind, but it will catch up. So that's what they're assuming for school enrollment.
Bottom line, having been at Future School Needs right before this, is that all of our schools are going to remain extremely full, a tad over full, but not so much over full that it's easy to say, build another school. But so we are going to continue to be on the bleeding edge of school enrollment.
Yes, which is not true across all of our peers.
It's not.
So, which is why we always watch the system as a driver. And then really related to enrollment is staffing. On the town side, we're looking to transfer the PIO position from warrant article to the operating budget. So that's the only FTE we're asking you to support, and it's something that the board has voted to support. It's in your goals. We've been trying to make it a permanent position for 4 years, and we really are hopeful that this is the year that we can make that happen, and it's really our number one priority. And the school budget includes 14.3 full-time equivalent positions, which we have included in our annual estimate. So the performance budget is what we refer to as items that we're recommending that are above and beyond what it takes to keep going the services that we have now. The performance budget doesn't include the fact, for instance, that energy costs more or the gasoline costs more. That's built into the base budget. These are the items that we're saying that we're seeing a significant need for. I would say again that we're being really judicious this year. We know there are more needs than these, but these are the ones that we're recommending at this time. So again, the schools headcount, the PIO, we are looking to fund the community housing specialist completely through the operating budget. There has been discussion that this position can't be funded through this Community Preservation Act funding. That is our current understanding, although we are continuing to probe at that and make sure we have that exactly right for this position. So we have a meeting coming up to talk about that, but that is our current understanding, is that it's not allowed by the rules of the CPC. I note again that we're thinking of additional headcount for FY24. In the service category, we believe that we'll be losing our long-term provider of the meals, the preparer of the meals for the traveling meals program, and we're searching for a replacement for that provider. We do believe that it may cost us, but the budget recommendation is $40,000, so that's what we're recommending. It's an estimate on the part of the Director of Health and Human Services, but traveling meals is something that we believe very strongly, and it's a very important program for us and for the people who rely on it. And we're hoping to have a permanent solution in the next few years, but we need to have this funding in order, just in case that something stops working, or that we need to be able to provide the services directly. And the final item is that if you've ever seen the employee trailer at the RTS, I forgot to check how old it is. It's got to be several decades. It's not, it's inadequate would be doing it, injustice. So we are proposing that we rent an employee trailer. And as you know, we're doing a service delivery study at the RTS and a DPW feasibility study. So the recommendation is to rent this trailer because we're not going to buy a new trailer for something if we're trying to change how we operate at the RTS. But is at this point not safe or appropriate for our employees to have that trailer for their being, there's no building there, as it's, that's their where they eat and, change and these kinds of things. Changes, more trees. This is the removal of the blue tree, and as if you go out there, that tree is beautiful and has gotten a lot bigger in the how many years is that? Maybe 2013-ish?
Did a town meeting.
I did a town meeting. I can't remember what year.
Maybe
I
10
was
years?
The Grinch.
Yeah.
6 or 7 years, yeah. It's thriving there. So changes to the submitted budgets, these are not performance increases. They're things that we have, the only things that we've changed to the items that were submitted by the department. The first is the townwide expenses is increasing by 338,000, and that is to account for the increases in employee benefits, workers' comp, and OPEB for the 14.3 positions that are recommended. The PIO position is already on payroll, so those fringe benefits are already in the budget. There's a reduction in the building design and construction department for an additional project manager. We do believe that there's a need for additional help there, but we do think that we need to see where the projects pan out, and this is likely to be revisited for recommendation in FY25. There are a few positions in Public Works, an HMEO, an assistant fleet supervisor, and a custodian. Given all of the studies that we're doing of the DPW, and we have a custodial contract cleaning service that's being rebid, and just trying to keep the number of FTEs in line in FY24. These are all some that we will be considering in FY25. And finally, in Health and Human Services, it's an $86,000 reduction. There are several positions that are included in the budget submission that are all supportable, at least in the near term, few years, by recurring grants that the department is getting. So those services will be provided. This, for instance, a part-time clinician, a front desk help at the Center at the Heights, and an environmental health inspection hours. Thank you. So those are all supportable by the kinds of grants that we are receiving for the HHS. On the public schools, as a reminder, it's been our practice since the beginning not to weigh in on the educational budget that's being voted on by the school committee after public hearing. In years where we simply don't have the revenue to support the requested budget, we would recommend a budget amount, and then the school committee would work to meet it, or things have evolved. In the last few years, we've been able to meet the number that they've put in. That doesn't mean that's the number. I do believe that's the number that they're voting on tonight, but that we all move on to the finance committee next, and that number could change. Again, the school budget is growing based on enrollment, and as the chair noted, the demographer is saying that we are predicting increasing in the future. A few items that the superintendent noted that I thought would be interesting for the board. Other pressures on the schools are relating to the services that they want to provide for the students that they have enrolled. As an example, the percentage of students who are classified or identify as white in the last 10 years has dropped from 83% to 73%, and these are it has an impact on the service delivery that the schools are trying to provide for a more diverse population. And the students whose first language is not English has increased from 7% to 11.4%, and that has an obvious impact on the ability of the schools to provide the educational opportunities to English language learners. The number of students requiring special education services increased from 14 to 18% in the last 10 years. And the number of students who are identified by the school as economically disadvantaged increased from 5% to 8.2%. So those are the kinds of things that put pressure on not just the number of students, but who we have and how the schools are working to support all students. And then finally, with respect to education on Minuteman School, our original estimate for the Minuteman School budget increase was 15%. We received the initial budget estimate before this budget was put to print, which is a 20% increase. So we're showing it as 20%. That's still not the final number, although it's usual that the final number is slightly less or equal to, I think they're conservative in their initial estimate. And this really is, it's driven by the cost of the school and the cost of education at the Minuteman School, but also by the fact that the incoming classes are 100% member schools. So the schools are not getting extra capital and outside revenue. And that is something that we said we wanted, and we do want. We want the school. We want all of our kids who want to go there to be able to go there. And so the school continues to see how it might expand and be able to offer even more slots to in member communities, but also to outer member communities. And then there might be increased revenue provided by those cities and towns in the future. The budget also includes funds and other transfers. I had both the Friendly sign and the Muzzy Ford sign in here, but only the Muzzy Ford sign made the final cut. The Compensated Absences Fund, the Athletic Facility Improvement Fund, these are two regular funds that we have almost every year in the budget. We will be talking more about what the appropriate amount to be putting in the Athletic Facility Improvement Fund. That's a part of our ongoing stabilization fund conversation. This is the amount we flatlined from last year. The drains and sewer contribution is a mechanism by which Dave, can you help me with this one? Thank you.
Sure.
Go backwards.
There's a portion of the sewer budget that's devoted to the drains and NIPD's compliances. And because, let's say the town were to get out of the sewer business and the water business, it sells the entity to another entity to take over. The town's still responsible for NIPD's and its drains because it's runoff and such from the public roads. So it's a general fund expense, but it's incorporated in the sewer enterprise fund. So we transfer the cost for those services to the enterprise fund.
We also transfer costs from the general fund from the enterprise fund back. So there's lots of transfers are going along. Dave, while you're there, do you mind explaining the allowance for abatements?
The allowance for abatements, that is the amount that is set aside to cover exemptions that are granted individuals who meet age, income, or other challenges. If they meet the qualifications, they're entitled to the exemption, which reduces their property tax. And an abatement is straightforward, that there was an error made on the original assessment. If deemed, that's how we cover the reduction in the tax. This is definitely on the lower side. And if the revenues do increase between now and the time of town meeting, the only line we anticipate that would increase would be that line.
Thank you, David. Other financial warrant articles. This is actually a picture in the fall of 2010 of the police and fire station from the old tower with those old ineffective antenna at the top. We did talk at your last meeting about the financial warrant articles. The facility maintenance program is our annual maintenance program that doesn't qualify for capital. Town-owned land surveys. Public Works has a list of town property that has never been surveyed. In some cases, it's property that in the future we might want to develop it. And in other cases, there just may be something that comes up by a neighbor or an abutter that would really behoove us to have our property, we know where it is. So this is a long-term, decades-long plan of making sure that some of the smaller parcels are parcels that the town owns that have never been surveyed, even if they're not going to be developed. If they're certain areas, the DPW would like to have them surveyed. So we use outside surveyors for that project. Property Tax Assistance Program provides small grants to those in need to help with their property taxes. The board is well aware of the Small Repair Grant Program. The Affordable Housing Trust, which consists of you and Avery Newton, had voted to seek an additional $50,000. The program has been very successful. The next three are all in our budget and all in HR. Our local government fellowship program has been proposed to implement the board's goal of recruitment, increasing our recruitment and retention efforts. This would be additional help for the department in order to push forward some of the policies and the benefits that help us become and retain our ability to be an employer of choice, and also to provide assistance for the HR department to bring many of our processes up into more automated and into current day policies and job descriptions and things like that that have been very hard for us with the staff that we have to keep current on. We've been using outside recruiting services to hire some of our more recent high-level management positions. We simply, particularly in, as Dave will tell you, in the finance area, there simply aren't there isn't the bench strength around where people are looking to get into these positions, and we've been successful, and we've recently used our consultant to help us hire a treasurer collector who we hope will be at one of your next meetings to introduce you to. And back in, I think, 2020, the town meeting approved a temporary staffing program that allowed us to backfill staffing in departments such as the treasurer's office, where we had people on leave or we had vacancies, and some of those positions, if you don't have someone there, we simply can't run. So that money has run out, and we're hoping to replenish it and use it as needed, really for very small departments who have no recourse. The one thing I wanted to mention about these three positions together is that we're recommending that they be funded through the tax levy. Because they're one time, typically we would recommend through free cash or overlay surplus, but our proposal for recommending it's about 321,000 is to that 331,000 would then be available in FY25. This would no longer be required to fund, and then we can move in, which is about $320,000 worth of ARPA staffing in HHS. So it's a way to prepare for 25 so that we don't have to cut something else, and that we do have the tax levy, we believe, to support it this year. The Opioid Recovery and Mitigation Fund, this $217,000 is funds that we've already received from the state through the several class action lawsuits with respect to opioid recovery mitigation. We're limited very much on what we can do with that funding. The state has not, I think we talked about this last time, they have not given us a mechanism to reserve it for that purpose. So we're in the position of having to create a warrant article for that purpose. We're hoping that that could get fixed. All of us who are getting this money, which is everyone, are working with our legislative delegations to make sure that we could have some kind of reserve for that, so that we don't have to keep making warrant articles and using them over multi-year, because we can only use that money for that purpose, or we'd have to give it back. We are expecting something like a 30-year payout of this amount, so we don't want 30 years of warrant articles for that purpose. And then finally, on the financial warrant articles, this is the other item we talked about. In the capital plan, refurbishment doesn't count as capital. So we have 150,000 in the general fund and 150,000 in the sewer enterprise fund that we're recommending for refurbishing our fleet to extend its life and make sure it's safe. On the capital plan, which was approved by the board at the end of December, given the new revenue estimates, we have additional recommendations to you that we will recommend to you in the warrant. And that is to move the tier 2 capital into tier 1. That includes $581,000 worth of public works infrastructure, $773,000 in fleet that was categorized as tier 2, and $52,000 in sewer fleet. So we would be including that in the articles, cash capital and other articles in the warrant for the board to consider. And then there were two new items that were not recommended because we weren't sure of the funding, and that is the NIPDs. You recall that we allocated ARPA funding for $600,000 for the sluice gate, but the remaining of that article was approximately $200,000 that we recommend be included in the warrant, along with the possibility of the Action Sports Complex study. I know the ARA, Active Recreation Area Working Group, has just gotten started. I know the Park and Recreation Commission said as a high priority that they'd be able to have a feasibility study. So we weren't sure we were going to be able to recommend it. So if the committee is moving along, and this is something that the Park and Rec Commission and the ARA Working Group want to pursue, we believe that could be funded in the annual or the special this spring. And then a proposal that I feel very strongly about is that given that we have the availability of free cash, we strongly recommend that the fire ladder in McLeod Field be moved from debt to cash. This really gives us much more flexibility in the future with our 3% within the levy debt capacity. And we have it, and we have tried in the past not to borrow for rolling stock. Sometimes we have to. This is a significant piece of equipment, but these are assets we believe are the appropriate category. They are shorter term borrowing. At least the fire truck is a shorter term borrowing. Dave, do I have that
It
right?
was going to be a 4-year.
Yeah. So it certainly makes sense to us that that be moved to a cash item. Finally, there's a view of the Powers Hall for any of you who didn't make it in there before it was renovated. That's after all the offices were ripped out, but before the renovation began. It's not that long ago now. So we are estimating CPA receipts at 3.2 million with a state match of 1.1 million. Finance director tends to be conservative on the state match, but we keep getting additional funding, so we're recommending this amount to you. We received an additional FY22 supplement. We already supplemented for FY22, and then we received an additional supplement, and now we have an additional FY23 supplement. So there'll be an item in the warrant for May to make sure, and this is to make sure that we call them the buckets, the reserves, are required to be funded at 10%. And every time we get new revenue, even though we fund them at 11%, we're surprised and we have to go back and supplement. So the reserve balances as of the end of the year, community housing at 2.6, historic at 72,000, and open space at 1.8. You recall that we satisfy our historic contribution by the debt service for town hall. We can bring Rocket up. We used to end with Tom Brady, but we don't do that anymore. There were the heyday years. Every year we do the budget and the Patriots would be in the playoffs, but now we have Rocket. That's a little bit of a baby Rocket too, I think.
That's
So
definitely a baby rocket.
that was very fast and it covered a lot of ground. So we'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you for covering all the ground that you did. I just want to go back to a couple things. Looking back when you talked about Needham Public Schools, and I'm looking at the increase, but it says for the 14 new full-time employees. Is that what's that for? And then you listed all different areas as far as the makeup of the school and things like that. Are those 14 positions going directly to help with the things that you kind of discuss as far as where we are and the support for the makeup of the school and how we're growing and all those things? And I just want to know, what are the positions, or do we not know what they are yet?
So the superintendent has created a PowerPoint presentation for the school committee. I believe he shared with the finance committee last week, and clearly outlines what the positions are and that they're for all of those reasons. And I'd be
Okay.
happy to get that PowerPoint to you. But that is where I got the information,
Got it.
talking to the superintendent and from his PowerPoint in particular.
Okay. And then my next one was in the Health and Human Services line. We talked about just a couple of those positions, the health inspector, front desk administrative, and then I'm looking at the positions that are funded by ARPA, but we didn't talk about making those, at least not tonight, we didn't talk about those, making those a permanent part, but I know it says that in here, those 3 positions are something that we most likely want to keep. How is that? When I think about this budget, I know we didn't mention it, but is that included in the plan to do that, even though I know we didn't discuss it
That's a
tonight?
great question.
Yeah,
ARPA funds go through FY24.
Okay.
So they are funded all the way through 24.
Right.
Through ARPA, in fact, a little bit into 25, so halfway through 25.
okay,
So we are full speed ahead on all those positions.
Okay.
We just didn't need to allocate any money to them. Next year, we'll be in here saying, okay, we're not going to make it through the year with the ARPA funding that we have.
okay,
So
so
we
that is
need to
coming.
commit in the operating budget for FY25 to make sure they stay.
Okay,
I mean, at least that would be our recommendation and what the board can evaluate.
And then the other question has to do with the housing stock and the money that we have invested so far. So with the CPC has kind of put it in their requirements, and I know that they're putting in about 22% every year for housing. And then I think about us as the Affordable Housing Trust in Avery. Where can we, as we look at that 200-page plan, be proactive in that sense with making sure that we have, I guess, a bigger bucket of money to be there, so we're ready to commit to things and we're not looking for cash, or just so we have a better stock ready piled to go to initiate in these plans and put these policies and procedures in place in a way that, like I said, it's more of a proactive approach, because I know as far as the trust, I know there's not that much money in that, but most of it's in with the CPA. CPC.
I think that's exactly right. I think, well, I also think that the town has set aside and in recent years doubled what it's setting aside for housing.
Right,
So there's,
11 to 22%.
so that really, we've been saving up. But I think the next step for the board, and in fact, the board and the planning board, is to go through those recommendations, prioritize the ones that you think can be done soonest,
Yeah.
and then we can start putting dollar values to those, and then we can start setting up mechanisms to do that. So
Right.
now that we have the plan, I think that is clearly the next step as to how we're going to be able to raise funds, find funds,
Yeah.
designate funds.
And when I think about, and Marianne, I know you're going to answer, but just when I think about the whole proactive approach, knowing that we have this plan, we know how expensive it's going to be. Would it hurt to start that, I guess, without knowing exactly what we need? So when we're ready, we're hitting the ground running in that sense. Do you know what I mean?
Well, so I think you're asking if there's additional money.
Additional than what's already in there, or how to go about procuring that ahead of time, knowing we're going to need it. We're going to need a significant, I assume, amount of money to get a lot of these things done. Instead of waiting for the plan to tell us, how much we need, we are under the assumption it's going to be quite a bit. So where can we go?
I think the
go ahead.
easiest answer, or the answer that can be done immediately, is to talk to the CPC about their plans for putting more money into the community housing reserve, because that's, if it goes there, it is not available for others. So
Right.
that's the easiest. Otherwise, we have to come up with ideas, put dollars to them, and put them in the budget process, which
Okay.
we will plan to do.
I'll go
Well,
Mary.
and I think the other challenge that we have, right, is I feel, at least to a great extent, the dollars that are currently in CPC are largely kind of earmarked in a way for the, for Linden Chambers and for rebuilding our sort of deeply affordable properties in town. So I think that the challenge that we have is that the the housing plan, right, outlines a number of other areas, additional areas.
Right, right.
So the CPC dollars, I think, are sort of allocated in
Already.
that sense.
That's what
And
okay.
what we'll need to understand is in what ways does the rest of the housing plan place additional demands on the taxpayers for funding? And what's that going to look like? And I don't think that's fully understood yet. So, and lots of things we would like to spend money on housing on. I don't think we understand the overall dollar picture.
And some of our recommendations don't require funding at all. They're zoning.
Some don't,
Or
right.
they're,
Yes.
significant and proactive outreach to the development community and things like that are not actually funding, but there are certainly funding items in there.
I assume some of those zoning plans will require studies and things like that, but will require money. But,
Yes, but I
In
do
some
think
capacity.
those get planned in our normal course of events. I don't see that as
like a
requiring
hurdle or something that's
extra.
out of,
Yeah.
okay, out of the ordinary. Thank you.
Sure.
Chair, yeah, I think
Matt.
This is
that,
awesome.
and I understand the housing need, we just went through the housing study.
Yep.
And I think we started this budget presentation off, we can only do a couple things really well, and there're just gonna be so many things coming, and I understand that there's an opportunity cost when we look at the CPA, and saying, okay, what money can we allocate to housing? But then if we do that, what are we going to potentially miss out on? So I think when we talk about prioritizing as a board, what are those items and coming up with a dollar amount, I think that's probably the best strategy at this time, so that we don't take away and say, you know what, we can't do X, it's just gonna languish in that fund. We thought it was a good idea at the time, but let's get a little more point on that arrow. So that's just a thought of that, but I like that thought. two things. Number one, the fire ladder, that's excellent, 'cause I know we had a big discussion on getting that out of debt. I don't know how you got that amount, but hey, listen, that's
Dave,
just
it's
genius at
finding the
work
free
here.
cash.
That's terrific. Traveling meals, someone who's done it and knows a lot of people who do it. It's just such an important thing for the town. And it's also a lifeline. I've heard stories of them going to the door, and I've had relatives use it, and they go to the door and there's no answer, so they start calling, the different people, and people have been saved because of that. So I'm assuming in the future, maybe we can partner with, one of the colleges or some institution or whatever we do down to try to get that kitchen back up. But for now, I think that's I know it's 40,000, but it's just so important. I just wanted to highlight that. I did have a question on the energy line item in the highlights, and it's gone up, I think 37% is what I'm reading, 37.2%. Is there a way, and I remember when I was in the finance committee, we'd maybe hedge or buy contracts or figure out a way to make sure that we're not getting those big increases, or is it just the volatility of the market we're kind of, concerned? Is there anything we can do to be proactive on that?
The answer is yes. We do have supply contracts, which does help put some estimates in terms of use, but there is approximately 2/3 of the cost is the regulated side of the utility, which those rates are established by the Commonwealth, and there have been some significant increases granted by the state to the public utilities. Another factor is that our consumption is up. So not only is the cost of the commodity higher, but also the amount of the commodity that we're using. And there are several factors that are driving that. Although we have invested a lot in our facilities, we have a lot of newer facilities, and many facilities that have been around for 10 years or less, but they're larger, and there's new demands for the use of power that didn't exist 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, computers in the classroom, there may have been a computer. Now there are multiple devices being used by students and teachers in every single classroom. It generates power use. Our firefighters, our EMTs, our paramedics rely upon technology when they make calls, equipment that has to be charged and stuff. Public police department, public works, use our HVAC systems, all computerized. So that also drives the cost. And then you have the seasonal variation. Do you have a cold winter, which there is higher energy use? Or do you have a warmer winter, which you have lower energy use? And conversely, the summertime. And then lastly, which has been seen over the last 2.5 years, the impact of COVID and the movement of air and the requirement of bringing fresh air more often. Well, those air handling devices use a lot of energy, and they're running all day, and so that has also increased the amount of energy use. And none of those items are likely to change in the near future, meaning next 2-3 years. Also, but noted one of the capital projects being funded is the rooftop units at the Broadmeadow and Elliott School, which will bring some efficiencies. But all those variables contributed to that increase. Hopefully, we will not see an increase as significant as that in 2025, but it is likely to still be higher unless the Commonwealth was to scale back the rate increases to the public utilities.
So this was the big jump, hopefully, to kind of get on that baseline of, air handlers moving air, higher increase for electricity costs, but hopefully the increase moving forward will be, like you said, higher depending on what happens, but not that significant. Is that
correct? We will be going out to bid again for natural gas supply next year, for instance. We locked into a shorter contract just because of the volatility in the pricing that we have. The electric supply is good until 2025. So we have some time before we have to lock in. Hopefully there'll be some stabilization to the electric market. And of course, what's driving that is in the Northeast is the shutting down of the coal generation electric plants and going to natural gas, and again, the natural gas spiking has contributed to the increased cost of supply.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could ask Katie to talk a little bit about what we're doing with respect to traveling meals to answer your
Oh,
question
great.
of like
Thank you.
what we're investigating.
Yes, perfect.
Yes, and if I could, while I have the mic, just put a finer point on what Mr. Borelli said just about the program. These are for homebound Needham residents, so either because of age or disability, and we deliver fresh meals. Every day volunteers deliver them, and it's 2 meals. It's a hot meal and a cold meal, so really they could get through the whole day, if they're managing breakfast on their own through this program. So it's amazing. Our Director of Health and Human Services, we're at a point where our current provider of the meals is looking to change that arrangement. And so we're figuring out kind of our next steps. So really, he's been reaching out to a number of vendors, institutions that run large commercial kitchens that might want to take this on. So I would make that a plug to anyone who's listening if you're interested in this service or this stream of business. But really just trying to find kind of where is it possible to do this work. The second thing that is being investigated is, could we do this in-house out of the Cath kitchen? And what would that look like? So Health and Human Services has undertaken a study both in terms of what would need to be retrofitted at the Cath, kind of the physical space to do kind of this kind of service, and then operationally, how would that be staffed? What would the financials look like? So all of that is happening now. And to the town manager's point, the $40,000 is, we know something's going to shift. We're not entirely clear yet to what or when. So we just want to be prepared to make sure that we can have some continuity, because it's really supporting those that are most in need.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Katie, did we check with, I'm curious, any of our restaurants in town who have significant catering operations to see if they would be interested?
I can
in
double check,
partnering
but
with the town?
I'll ask him.
I'm sitting here thinking, I think we have at least 3 that fit that category.
Yep.
So,
Thanks.
okay. Heidi.
I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the Medicaid reimbursements that we get?
I'm going to leave them today.
Medicare, that's generally the work of the school department. Certain students under special ed, some of the costs incurred are eligible for reimbursement from Medicaid. But one of the areas that there's been a cut in federal funds has been Medicaid, and hence why I specifically called that out and showed the chart of the volatility. There were times that we were near $1 million in reimbursements, and now we're a couple $1,000s. And even the Department of Revenue has been given guidance to communities to be very thoughtful in their estimates. Thoughtful means don't assume.
Okay.
Certainly don't increase.
And then one other question. Let me find the chart before I ask. On page 316, one of the items in the fiscal year tax levy chart is the levy in abeyance. And I'm not familiar with that term. So if you could just tell me what that
That means
means.
that was taxes that weren't raised.
Like not collected or not raised?
We never taxed the individuals because we didn't appropriate enough to spend all the money.
Oh, okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, just a couple comments. One was, thanks for explaining the community preservation buckets, because I was trying to read that and I couldn't understand the extra assessments that were coming through, so. Yeah, I was curious. And then can you just explain again the sustainability coordinator for coming up for next year? How we mentioned it briefly, are we kind of
So,
positioned for that?
Public Works put it in as a future form. So we are trying to find, it's in our planning now.
Okay.
That, the tax levy amount that we've allocated for one-time items.
Yeah.
That could be moved over for that as well. We're also trying to figure out if there are grants, anything that we could get started earlier. So we're looking at many sources of funding for that. Getting a new position fully into the budget is a long process. So I'm glad we're starting now.
Right. Thank you.
So, and Kevin, as you know, that we're at the point where we are just on the verge of hiring
right, a consultant to actually work with us to write the plan now that the working groups have done all their parts to have information available to build the plan. Once the plan is available,
Right.
then we're hoping to get going, so that becomes a question of how do we do that? But it's also an interesting conversation because the FinCom would typically be looking for the plan to understand how that role fits within the context of the plan
Yeah.
and what we're expecting to do. So we know that that's coming. And
Right, so we may
trying
need to look at, are there ways that we can have parts of sustainability coordinator that, if you have 5 top priorities and some of them involve town, then there may be town money, but if they're outside town, it's harder. So
Yeah.
we
No, I know, there's a lot
How
of
do you-
federal, it'd be interesting because my understanding is they could capture a lot of grant money from the state and federal levels.
One of the things that Senator Markey said at the MMA was that there's a potential change in the ARPA regulations that would allow communities to have more flexibility. So you recall our state money, we have designated as revenue loss. The board has continued to meet almost virtually all of the ARPA designations, but we have some more flexibility. Our county money, we are very strictly limited on what we can use it for. So if the Treasury released another rule that said there's more flexibility, and one of the things Senator Markey specifically said was ARPA should be able to pay for a grant writer to help us get more money out of these big bills that we keep passing, and everybody was cheering. So I don't know, it takes a long time for final rules of Treasury to get amended, but I think that it's a possibility that that would be really useful.
Thank you.
anything else? So this is, again, the start of a process, as usual. We'll now have nights when we'll be meeting with the FinCom and getting prepared for what this means as they've been doing their work with various departments and rolling it all up to see what budget comes forward to town meeting.
Would the board be willing to vote to recommend approval of the budget for transmission? to
We
the
can
FinCom?
absolutely recommend approval for this one if we
Can I
could have
make
a motion.
Mhm. I make a motion that the board vote to recommend approval of the town manager's proposed annual budget for fiscal year 2024. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
To everybody, because I know this takes more than, again, more than a few weekends and more than a few nights and more than a few days, and
Few is the word of the year.
few, yeah, more than
Not a
few.
couple, few.
More than a few. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
All right. Nothing else in the town manager report? Okay. Board discussion, the Liberty Tree vote. So you will all recall that last time we had, the Exchange Club was here about the Liberty Elm. Kevin provided us with a further history lesson about elms on that particular day. But is there any further discussion, or are we ready for a motion?
I believe Mr. Keene spoke to Mr. Dealey, is that
Yeah,
right?
I think so I think we're,
On the
I don't know what
Ready?
his draft is, but I'm happy with, we're doing it's a great project, so I'd make a motion. We move the select board dedicate the American elm located at Fire Station 2, Liberty Elm. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is 5-0. The next item is the select board goal review. We met once again to discuss our goals.
January 9th?
I can't remember exactly
Goes
which
the
day,
9th?
I think January 9th. And at that meeting, we made a couple of revisions. I will say we disappointed the town manager in that we did not manage to jettison
a lot of goals to the future.
There were a couple.
There were a couple. There were not a few. There were a couple.
I believe they were 4.10, 7.3, 7.5. Are newly moved.
Newly moved.
Those are the
So-
only changes. We
We
discussed.
moved 7.10?
Yeah, I think we did.
I'm sorry, no, 7.9.
Yep, we did. I'll amend that if that's okay. Thank you.
Friendly
Well,
amendment.
I kind of, yeah. I
Yeah.
wish we weren't. Out of the Climate Action Plan Committee, there's talk about the new code coming, and I think they're gonna be recommending that soon.
It'll be just in the right time,
The
just in the
year.
right time.
Right.
yeah.
So the expectation is that, that now that it is out, that once we get through this process, that the building inspector will
Right.
take a look and we'll figure out where we're going next.
I note there are only 5 months left in FY '23.
And he's already got to implement the
far.
updated stretch code as it is. So, but we go through all these so that everybody again can see them and can see the session is available so people can see what was discussed in terms of visiting the progress that we've already made, which is significant. So again, when you take a moment to look backwards, you're like, oh, there are a number of things that we have in fact already finished here and other pieces that are in process and still to come. So just assessing what the work is there. So with the one friendly amendment that's been identified, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the board vote to adopt the revised FY 2023-2024 goal statement as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Thank you. Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports?
Well, Madam Chair, I will say, and Heidi, I guess, can speak to this as well. We started the action committee. We had a, Heidi chaired it, we co-chaired it together. Had some discussion on it. We changed the schedule around a little bit to have a public hearing, not this meeting coming up, but the following meeting. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but, the goal is to get plots of land in Needham that we can recognize as, suitable for certain uses, and then be able to get that and prioritize that, and with input from Park and Rec, and then get something that someone can look at as a guideline, as a map, and say, here are the priorities, and here's where we can look at them going and see if that will work or not. So it's a condensed process, but we're trying to get it to the annual town meeting, otherwise the special in the annual. And with that, Heidi, I don't know if you want to.
I think, Mr. Burley, you did a wonderful job
Oh, thank you.
summarizing that.
Well, it's nice working with you.
I have nothing further to add.
Great.
All right. I'm not sure that I know of any other committees that have met.
Climate Action.
Did we meet since then? I guess we did meet, but we met really to review all the components of the plan again and, right, so we're ready to go forward and hoping that the consultant is on board soon. All right, if there are no other comments, the one other thing that I was just going to raise for people coming out of our consent agenda is just to draw the attention to the folks that Walter McDonough did resign from his position of assessor, so there will be a new position available for the annual town election ballot for the remainder of his unexpired term, which would run until April 15th, 2025. So if somebody is interested in running for assessor in Needham, they should get some papers from the town clerk. The assessors are part of the discussion that we're looking at about whether that should be an elected or appointed position, but that is another thing. They are currently elected roles and somebody would have to draw papers. If there's no further comments,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, we are adjourned.